There is a particular kind of tiredness that comes from reading eligibility criteria. You start full of hope, you get 3 paragraphs in, and somewhere around the 4th clause, with its conditions and its exceptions and its unless and its provided that, your eyes glaze and you quietly give up, none the wiser about whether any of it applies to you. This is one of the most common places owners get stuck, and it is not because they are not clever enough. It is because nobody has ever shown them how this kind of text is meant to be read, which is not like a story and not like a sales page, but like a set of gates you either pass through or you do not. So in the next few minutes, we are going to give you a way to read eligibility text calmly and get a clear answer out of it. One note before we begin, this channel is educational only. We are not a government agency. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by Go Business Enterprise Singapore or any government body, and nothing here is official advice. We name no schemes, no criteria, and no figures because those change over time, so we will always point you back to the official source, gobusiness.gov.sg, to confirm what actually applies to your situation before you rely on any of it. Why eligibility text feels impenetrable? Eligibility text feels hard for a reason that has nothing to do with you. It is written to be precise, not to be pleasant, and precision reads as coldness and density. Every clause is there to draw an exact line between who is in and who is out, and to close off the clever misreadings people would otherwise attempt, which is why it is full of qualifications and careful wording. If you read it the way you read anything else, front to back, hoping to be carried along, it will defeat you because it was never trying to carry you anywhere. It is a specification, and a specification is not absorbed, it is checked. Once you accept that the text is not being difficult on purpose but is simply doing a precise job, you can stop expecting it to flow and start doing the thing it actually invites, which is testing yourself against it one line at a time. What eligibility text is really doing, underneath all the wording, eligibility text is doing one simple thing: sorting. It exists to separate the situations a form of support is meant for from the ones it is not, cleanly and defensibly, so that the right businesses are included and the wrong ones are not. Every sentence, however dense, is a piece of that sorting machinery. Some sentences describe the kind of business it is for. Some describe the kind of activity it supports. Some describe conditions that must be true. Some describe things that disqualify you. If you can see each clause as a part of a sorting machine rather than as an obstacle, the whole thing becomes far less intimidating. Because your job is no longer to understand the document, it is to run yourself through the machine and see which side you come out on. That reframing does most of the work of not getting lost. Read for the gates, not the prose. The single most useful shift is to stop reading eligibility text as prose and start reading it as a series of gates. A gate is a condition you either meet or you do not, and to be eligible you generally have to pass through all of them. So instead of trying to hold the whole passage in your head, hunt through it for the individual gates and deal with them one at a time. This turns an overwhelming wall of text into a short checklist, and a checklist is something a human can actually finish. It also stops the common mistake of getting a warm feeling from the first encouraging sentence and assuming the rest will be fine. Every gate counts, and one closed gate is enough to stop you. So read to find them all rather than reading to be reassured by the friendly bits at the start. Find who it is for. Start by locating the part of the text that describes who the support is for. Because if you are not that kind of business, nothing else matters and you can stop early. This usually covers the basic shape of the eligible business, the sort of entity it is, where it operates, the kind of activity it does. Read this first and read it strictly because owners love to talk themselves into the who, deciding they are close enough when the text is drawing a firmer line than they would like. If you clearly fit, move on. If you clearly do not, you have your answer and you have saved yourself the rest of the document. If you are genuinely unsure, mark it and keep it as an open question rather than resolving it in your own favor, because a hopeful reading of who it is for is one of the most common ways owners waste weeks on something that was never for them. Find what it supports. Next, find the part that describes what the support is actually for, the kind of project or activity it exists to help with, because a business can be perfectly eligible while its project is not. This is a distinction owners miss constantly. The support might be aimed at a particular sort of improvement or a particular category of activity, And if your project is a different animal, being the right kind of business will not save it. So hold your intended project up against this section specifically and ask whether the thing you want to do is genuinely the thing this is meant to support, or whether you are hoping the boundary is fuzzier than it is. Getting an honest answer here early is enormously valuable, because it is far better to learn that your project is out of scope now than after you have poured effort into shaping an application around it. Watch for the small words. Eligibility text turns on small words that are easy to skim over and that completely change the meaning, and means every condition applies together, or means any one of them will do. Must and shall mark a hard requirement, may signal something optional or permitted. Unless and except introduce a carve-out that can quietly disqualify you after an encouraging sentence. Only narrows things sharply. These little words are where the real precision lives, and reading past them is how people convince themselves they qualify when they do not. So slow down deliberately whenever you hit one, and make sure you know whether a list is things you need all of or just one of, and whether a sentence is granting something or taking it away. The difference between an and or has decided more eligibility questions than any grant clause. So give the small words the attention the big sentences usually steal. Separate must-haves from nice-to-knows. Not every sentence in an eligibility passage is a gate. Some are genuine requirements that decide whether you are in or out, and some are context, explanation, or background that helps you understand the support but does not itself test you. Learning to tell these apart keeps you from drowning, because you can give your real attention to the sentences that actually decide something and read the rest more lightly. A requirement usually tells you something must be true or must not be true. Context usually explains why the support exists or how it works. If you are not sure which a sentence is, treat it as a requirement until you know otherwise, to stay safe. But do not exhaust yourself weighing every explanatory line as if your fate depended on it, because it does not. And mistaking background for a barrier is its own way of getting lost. Turn each rule into a yes or no question. Here is the technique that makes everything click. Take each gate you have found and rewrite it in your own words as a plain question you can answer yes or no about your own business. Not a paraphrase, a question. Is my business the kind described? Is my project the kind supported? Is this condition true for me? Is any disqualifying thing present? Then answer each one honestly, and where you cannot answer, write unsure rather than yes. When you are done, you are holding a short list of yes, no, and unsure, and that list tells you exactly where you stand and exactly what you still need to find out. This converts a passage that felt like fog into a handful of concrete questions with concrete answers. And it is the difference between finishing the reading with a decision and finishing it with a headache. Sometimes you read carefully and your situation simply is not addressed. The text neither clearly includes you nor clearly excludes you. This is uncomfortable because you want a verdict and the words will not give you one. The wrong response is to fill the silence with the answer you prefer, deciding that not mentioned means allowed. Absence is not permission, and it is not refusal either. It is a genuine open question that the text alone cannot settle. The right response is to note precisely what is unclear, phrase it as a specific question, and take that question to where it can actually be answered rather than guessing. Owners get into trouble not when the text says no, which at least is clear, but when the text says nothing and they treat the gap as a yes. When the text does not mention you, that is a signal to ask, not to assume. When you are not sure, do not guess. This is a golden rule of reading eligibility text, and it protects you more than any technique. When you are genuinely unsure whether you qualify, do not resolve the doubt in your own favor and press on as if it were settled. Uncertainty that you paper over does not disappear, it just moves further down the process, where it costs far more to discover. A misread requirement found at the start is a minute of rereading. The same misread requirement found after you have invested weeks is a painful surprise. So treat every unsure as a real task, something to confirm before you rely on it, not a technicality to wave through. There is no shame in not being certain. The text is deliberately precise and your situation may be genuinely borderline. But there is real cost in pretending to a certainty you do not have. Confirm first, commit second. Read the current version at the source. Everything we have described is a way of reading, and it works on any eligibility text you meet. but the text itself must always be the current official one. Criteria change, sometimes quietly, and a version you saw before, or a summary someone else wrote, or an explanation on a third-party site may be out of date or subtly wrong in exactly the detail that matters to you. This is why we deliberately name no criteria here, because anything specific we said could be stale by the time you watch. So take these reading skills to gobusiness.gov.sg and apply them to the real current wording for whatever you are considering. Read the source, not a memory of the source. And when your careful reading still leaves you unsure, use the official channels to resolve it, rather than settling for your own best guess about words that were written to be exact. A closing thought. So here is the method to carry away. Eligibility text is not a story. It is a set of gates, so read it to find every gate rather than to be reassured by the friendly opening. See it as a sorting machine and run yourself through it. Find who it is for and what it supports, and read both strictly rather than hopefully. Slow down for the small words because and, or, must, unless, and only carry the real precisions. Separate genuine requirements from background, turn each rule into a plain yes or no question about your own business, and when the text does not mention you, ask rather than assume. Above all, when you are unsure, do not guess. Remember that everything here is general and educational. We are not a government agency and we are not affiliated with or endorsed by anyone, and we name no criteria because they change, so read the current official wording on gobusiness.gov.sg. If this made the wall of text feel navigable, subscribe for more plain English Singapore Grant explainers, and we will keep making the dense parts readable.